Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our meeting this morning. We still have a few minutes before 11, so I will be here waiting with you. If anybody arrives, please make sure to say good morning so I know you were there. All right. Uh-huh. Very good. Welcome everyone to our Sunday meeting. We have a few minutes before we start, so while we are waiting, I would like to remind you that during our live transmission, you have the ability to donate to our center. Although we are currently holding all our meetings online, you have the code on top of the screen that you can use to make a donation to our center. We are in the process and will be shortly looking for a new home for conscious living. So we will definitely need your assistance. So if you can, if you're in conditions to, please make sure to use the code on top of the screen and help us out by making your donation. Good morning, Iracema. Good morning, JC. Nice to see you guys here. Also, for you that are arriving at this time, I would like to remind you that we have many online courses ongoing, both in Portuguese and in English. For the English-speaking folks, we have the Gospel according to Spiritism course. It happens just before this meeting at 9:30 every Sunday. We also have a course that studies the series of Andrew Lewis with Andrea Marshall, and that happens every other Wednesday evening. So if you need information about our courses, we have also a course on mediumship with our friend Carlos Baruchi, who just joined us. Good morning, Carlos. So we have many courses. If you're interested in studying, you can always reach out, ask for more information. The information is also available on our website. Good morning, Monique. Welcome. We're just waiting another minute to start our meeting. Today is going to be a very special meeting, a little bit of a different format this morning. We're going to have two short lectures instead of one lecture. And we'll have our special guest, our friend from Baltimore, Daniel, who will be joining us in a little bit. Good morning, Regina. Nice to see you. And now it is, according to my computer here, 11 a.m. sharp. Good morning, Juan. We will be starting our meeting as always, opening a page and doing an initial reading while folks are joining and arriving. Our reading for this morning is from the book Our Daily Bread, and the title is Prayer, is chapter 108. Persevere in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. Paul. Many believers would like to use prayer as if it were a broom or a hammer. They expect immediate results, unaware of any preparatory effort. Others persevere in prayer but remain frightened and anxious. They wear themselves out and consume valuable energy on unjustifiable afflictions. They see only evil and darkness, and they never take time to examine the tender young sprout of the divine seed or the close or remote potential for the good. They imprison themselves on the evil side and sometimes waste an entire lifetime without any intention of going over to the good side. What probability of success could possibly be in store for the needy who cry out their appeals with obvious symptoms of imbalance? From the very start, a sensible grantor will hold off on an answer, prudently waiting for the potential grantee to regain his or her composure. In this sense, Paul's words are clear. It is imperative to persist in prayer, to be watchful in it with thanksgiving. It is crucial to realize that praise does not only entail uttering beautiful words, it also means being happy while in full combat for the victory of the good, expressing gratitude to the Lord for the reasons for suffering and sacrifice, and seeking the advantages that adversity and effort have brought to the spirit. Let us ask Jesus for the gift of peace and happiness, but let us not forget to glorify his sublime designs each time his merciful and just will clashes with our inferior objectives. Let us be convinced that ill-timed prayer, comprised of desperate thoughts and improper demands, is destined for the soil of renewal, as happens to an unproductive flower blown away by the wind. This is a very, very beautiful lesson. I really would recommend everyone to go back and read it really slowly and take time to contemplate about the importance of prayer, but also importantly, our position, our attitude when we are praying. So, very well. So let's do our initial prayer. It's so good to see John here with us this morning, Biga, and everybody else who has joined us. So let's please join me in a short prayer, asking our dear Father this morning with immense gratitude for everything, for this day, just as it is, with the blessings, with the sun, with the rain, with the achievements, with the struggles, with the difficulties, all the obstacles. For every single aspect of this day, we would like to say thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here together. We ask you to bless us all who are here connected, the spiritual realm with us, all the incarnate connected through the internet, all of us. May we all receive your blessings, and may this time be a time where we can nurture our souls and find the strength, the consolation, the hope, and the meaning to move on with our lives, doing the best each day, always, always with gratitude in our hearts. Thank you again, and so be it. All right, dear friends. Today we have a little bit of a special meeting. I am going to bring in our special guest, and there he is. Hi, Daniel. Daniel is a dear friend and brother, and he is one of the co-founders of the Spirit Society of Baltimore and very, very active member of the Spiritist movement. Many people don't know him that well because he's behind the cameras most of the time. Nowadays, he's coming out a little bit more and showing his face, and which is a great thing, actually. We did this talk together yesterday, and so I invited him to repeat with me today. And so, Daniel, just want to say good morning to everybody.
Yes, good morning, Susanna. Thank you so much. I like the coming out, that's true. I have, been behind the scene for so many years, but always good to be here and to share a little bit about this beautiful teaching of Spiritism, especially with you, Susanna, because I know that I'm in good hand now. So thank you for the
Well,
invitation, and I hope that you guys also is going to enjoy our little time here. and talking about this beautiful doctrine that is Spiritism. Thank you.
Okay, so the way we're going to be doing this is I am going to talk about 20 minutes more or less, and then Daniel will also have his talk afterwards. If there's time at the end, we'll be more than happy to look at your comments or answer your questions. So if there's anything that comes up, please, by all means, write it up. We'll be paying attention, and again, if possible, we will get back to it. So at this time, I'm gonna put Daniel in the backstage, and I'll bring him back when he's turn to join us. All right, so we are going to talk today a little bit about spiritism, and it's very interesting. I was sharing yesterday how people ask me to do so many talks. I'm constantly talking different places, and whether people give me a specific topic or I have to think of a topic, I'm always looking for something different, for something that maybe no one have talked about, or a different way of approaching things. And then this group from Vancouver actually asked me to talk about the basic principles of Spiritism. And to my surprise, it was a very, very enjoyable journey and process that I underwent this week by putting this talk together and reviewing and being absolutely delighted to go over the very basic principles, the foundation of Spiritism, and just realizing how simple it is, how complex it is at the same time, and also how much sense the whole thing makes, how logic the whole concept of Spiritism is. And so I just really was able to deeply appreciate the very basic concepts that we take for granted nowadays, always trying to talk about something different, sometimes, in special ways. But then in the very basic, like daily bread, right? The rice and beans of Spiritism is truly, truly, truly what sustains us and what allows us to actually read other authors and go deeper into other areas with a great understanding and a great foundation. So let's start from the very beginning by defining Spiritism. And Spiritism is defined by Allan Kardec in what is Spiritism. And it is defined primarily as a science of observation and a philosophical doctrine. So Kardec will say it is a practical science, consists in the relationships that can be established with the spirits. And it's also a philosophy that entails all the moral consequences that result from such relationships with the spirits. So, in essence, Kardec is going to define Spiritism for us as a science based on the observation of the phenomena that was taking place at the time, the verification that there was something intelligent that was going on, and therefore the cause should also be intelligent. So the science of observation, the study of the phenomena that establish this relationship with the spirits, is the very foundation and the very definition of Spiritism. And also its philosophical aspects that, what are then if spirits exist and, the study of this relationship, how does that change our life? What are the consequences, the moral consequences more specifically? So that is really the basis of Spiritism. And a lot of people think and ask, and rightly so, if Spiritism is a religion. And in the same book, in a dialogue with a priest, Kardec is going to argue that Spiritism is not a religion, at least not in the sense that the most traditional sense that religions are understood as a very structured entity. And as it says, Spiritism does not concern itself with dogmatic issues. He will further explore this concept, and I will read what Kardec wrote in What is Spiritism. He says, Spiritism is a science that has moral consequences, as do all philosophical sciences. It comes to shed light on a multitude of questions formerly insolvable and misunderstood. So, the science of Spiritism, the understanding of the spiritual life, and all the phenomena help us to understand so many issues that we couldn't understand before. Its true character is therefore of a science, is of an investigation, and not of a religion. And he will argue that in Spiritism, the proof that it's not a religion is that we will find adherents of all types of different religions that can join Spiritism, that can be part of Spiritism without having to renounce to their convictions or to their particular religions. But Kardec will also say that Spiritism does not contradict the foundation of all formal religions. So in Spiritism, we're going to find some elements that all religions will embrace, such as the existence of one sole God that is just and that is good, the fact that spirits are free and responsible for their actions, and they will be held accountable for their actions, whether their actions are in line with love or they are not in line with love, whether they are good or they are bad. And finally, it places charity and love above all virtues, as it has been taught by Jesus, when he says that we should also do unto others exactly what we would like to be done upon ourselves. So these principles are principles, the principle of the existence of God, the principle of we are being responsible for our actions and having future consequences, and the idea that love prevails. Those are fundamental principles. They are common to all religions. Now, not only Spiritism does not contradict the religions when it comes to those aspects, but Spiritism will help to develop a sentiment of religiosity. So, although it's not a religion in its most traditional sense, it helps to develop this sense of religiosity, because now we understand that life goes on. We understand that spirits are real, as we will see. We understand that we are all brothers and sisters under God, and we understand the philosophy of Spiritism. This combination of the scientific observation and the philosophy will ultimately help us to connect with ourselves, with our brothers and sisters, and with God. And it is precisely this outcome of connection to all that makes Spiritism a religion, so to speak, or that gives Spiritists this sentiment of religiosity. When we look at the principles, what are the basic principles then of Spiritism? The first one, the existence of God. The idea that there is one God that is the supreme intelligence of the universe. When we look at nature, when we look at a flower blooming right in front of our eyes, or when we look at a butterfly or a bee, or when we look at ourselves, because we too are part of nature, we think, who can possibly have created all those things? It is way, way beyond human mind and human capacity. It needs to be something that is immense. It needs to be something that is superior. It is something that we cannot comprehend, but it must exist and had created all these amazing and beautiful things. So, with that, the idea of God as the supreme intelligence, but also the supreme love, the supreme justice. And Jesus da Cruz, a spirit who communicates through the mediumship of André Moreira. He speaks of God also in a way that I always like, because not only he brings up this God as a creator, but also he brings God as a being that structures and that is constantly organizing the universe. It sustains the organization and the structure of the entire universe. My dear friends, when we feel God this way, when we understand God this way, and our lives are dismantling in front of our eyes, and things are appear to be in a state of chaos, we are able to endure these feelings, to endure these days, knowing that this is all an illusion. Because all it takes is a second for us to put our eyes in one of those amazing creations, or take a second to look at the sky and look at the stars and look at the sun or the moon and understand that any idea of chaos is an illusion, because there is this powerful structuring and organizing force that sustains life, that sustains the universe or the many universes, and we are just a small part of it. We too are being sustained and held by this incredible power that we call God. But Spiritism does more for us. It talks about the immortality of the soul. And the immortality of the soul is a concept that so many religions do believe in. But for us, it's a little bit more concrete than many. And we know that spirits, for example, are the souls of the incarnate who used to live here on Earth, on another planets, and now are stripped of their corporeal envelope. They are not, as so many other religions believe, these indefinite beings, nor they are flames or ghosts like we see in some of the tales about other worlds. They are beings like we are, with a body like ours, just invisible, just in a different dimension, fluidic, but nevertheless a body that defines and that holds our individuality with absolutely everything that we have learned, that we have achieved, that we have acquired. All our knowledge, all our virtues, our emotions, our experiences, everything remains with us. Our individuality persists. So, with the idea of immortality, we kill literally the biggest enemy of humanity, which is death. Spiritism comes to tell us that death, as we understood, no longer exists. In reality, the only thing that exists in the universe is life. We are always alive. We are either alive in the physical body or we are alive outside of the physical body. The only thing that dies is this material envelope that deteriorates, that is matter, and that decomposes itself. But the spirit goes on, always alive. And more than that, it gives us an idea that the life on the beyond is not, again, this very vague, abstract concept of life, but it's a life that is abundant. It's a life that is filled of meaning, filled of learning experiences, of possibilities. It's a life that's ever expanding. So this is a beautiful and a very consoling and comforting idea to all of us. Our next principle is the principle of reincarnation. And the principle of reincarnation allows us to understand that we are progressively improving. It would be impossible for a spirit just born, just created, simple and ignorant, without any knowledge and awareness, to be able to reach a state of perfection in one very short, tiny existence on this planet. So, reincarnation will give us renewed opportunities to strip ourselves again from ignorance, to gain awareness, but also on our way to make amendments and to learn from our mistakes. It is perhaps one of the biggest manifestations of God's mercifulness and justice. It helps us to understand the apparent inequalities that we see in the world. when we look at someone who has so much, someone who has so little, someone who is very healthy from the get-go, someone that is born with a lot of limitations, disabilities, diseases, and all kinds of apparent disparities that we see in the world, we now understand that they are part of the evolution process and that each person is having a temporary experience where absolutely everything that he or she is living, the context, the circumstances, the people are set up by this higher power, by this supreme intelligence for the betterment. Each one of us is receiving today the absolute best for our improvement and to meet our emotional and spiritual needs for the present moment. Spiritism also will help us to understand the role of pain and suffering in our lives. We understand now, under the context of reincarnation, the law of cause and effect and action and reaction, that there is a purpose for everything and that everything is in the right place. Beyond that, we have the concept of plurality of the worlds. And this explains Jesus saying when he said, there are many dwellings in my Father's house. So we understand that there are many different worlds, as it's stated in the gospel, that revolve in the infinite space, offering to incarnate spirits infinite space, infinite stations appropriate for their advancement. So in the universe, the worlds represent different stations. Stations that are going to meet our, again, spiritual needs for a given time. We can also interpret this passage from Jesus by thinking that the different dwellings are our different inner states. Sometimes the state is one of more or less harmony, more or less peace, more or less awareness. But regardless, if we're talking about the inner dwellings or the outer dwellings, will always be a match between these two realities. So spirits will be sent to dwellings, to stations that meet their inner place, their inner needs, their inner situation. So here on earth, we know that this dwelling, this station, is very much like a hospital with different wings. There is a wing for acute care, a wing for chronic diseases of the souls, and also there is room and space for rehabilitation for souls that are in the process of actively working in the rehabilitation of their souls. One day we'll leave a dwelling like this, or this dwelling itself will be transformed in a place, a convalescent place, a place where we're no longer so sick, but we are a little bit better and able to do a little bit more, or at least have less suffering and commit less harm to ourselves and to others. Eventually, we are discharged for a dwelling where it's no longer a hospital of any way, shape, or form, more like a home where we can be useful to God, to the universe, and will be in a lot better shape emotionally and spiritually. And one day we're going to go to some celestial home where there's absolutely no evil, no pain, and no suffering. So these are the dwellings that are there like classrooms, like wings of hospital, serving humanity in its most specific needs at any given time. And then finally, we have the communicability of the spirits, which many don't understand, up to today don't accept. And Kardec says that part of it is because people have mistaken ideas about the souls after death. Many people believe that souls are these vaporous beings that actually evaporate and go off to some place that God knows where. So if you believe that this is what souls are, such an abstract and vapors and really not much of anything, then how come something that is not much of anything would be able to come and to communicate? But Spiritism explains to us, as we have already mentioned, that They are semi-material beings. They have bodies that form individual beings. And therefore, communication is not really incompatible with reason. Spiritism tells us that these worlds are constantly interacting and reacting upon each other. So there is really no separation as we used to think. Where is the spiritual world? Oh, it's up there, somewhere up there. No, the spiritual world is right here. I'm sure that the spirits are here with me. They are interacting with me right now. I'm interacting with them. We're coexisting and we influence one another at all times. And so we see the presence of communications throughout the course of all times in all different cultures. And when Allan Kardec time came, pretty much those communications, they were exacerbated and they started to occur in a much more common way. And Kardec will say also in what is Spiritism. It was in the designs of Providence to put an end to the scourge of disbelief and materialism by means of obvious proof, enabling those who have left Earth to come and to attest to their existence and to reveal their happy or unhappy condition. So those are the principles. And our final thought is, what are the consequences of those principles in our lives? And there are many, and we have already cited some, but gives life a very different meaning, doesn't it? It changes our perspective about our lives today. It gives us tremendous amount of consolation. It explains the world in ways that I think no other religion can do. It just gives a meaning, it gives purpose, it gives us a deep understanding, and in doing so, it really provides us a type of faith that is the unshakable faith that Allan Kardec talks about, a faith that can reason with things, that can understand things. So with Spiritism, even when our souls are the most broken down and we are enduring tremendous amount of pain, we also know about the presence of God. We know about our immortality. We understand where we are, why we are here, why we are going to what we are going, and most importantly, where we are heading to. So even when our souls are feeling broken or down, we never ever lose sight of the sky, and we never lose hope. And we live each day in each circumstance, whether it's good or bad, always understanding that in each of these moments lies an incredible opportunity for growth, and we seek to grow with life. But finally, what Spiritism does for us is connect us. Connect us. It makes us understand that each individual, each one, our neighbors, no matter who they are, how different they are from us, how unaware or more aware they are than we are. We are all connected. We are all children of God. Our value is absolutely the same. Our life only has meaning because everybody else is there. The meaning of our life is deeply connected to our brothers and sisters. Therefore, when people come to me and ask, how is it that I connect with God? God is so distant. God is so incomprehensible. I will say, we connect to God, to God's creatures. We connect to God by connecting with nature, and especially to our brothers and sisters. And it is precisely in this connection, because religion comes from religare, is to reconnect with God. And Spiritism powerfully speaks to us about the importance of the existence of each one of us. And in doing so, helps us to connect to our brothers in a deep and sincere way. And in doing so, it ultimately leads us back to God our Father. All right, my dear friends. So that was my talk. I'm going to take a little break and bring Daniel back in. Now he's going to talk about us. He's going to answer us this question. Is Spiritism the future of religions, or is the religion of the future?
Thank you, Susanna. It was a nice introduction about the spiritual principles, spiritist principle, and it's always good to revisit those teachings because sometimes when we start to study spiritual, we forget to go back and to really dive in those principles because those principles is the cornerstone of our beliefs and also is the information that will help someone to really true connect with God. That is what the first principle, as you have beautiful explained it here. So, in order for us to answer this question, if Spiritism is going to become one day the religion of the future, um, we need to go back and to read some of those wary questions that was made to Kardec. Because when Kardec codified those informations, when he put together the Spiritist codification, one of the questions that was posed to him that time is about if this body of knowledge that he was now publishing those books will become a religion, the religion of the future. And there is several information throughout the codification and also in the Spiritist Review of 1868, where Kardec has beautiful described answer those questions. And of course, in that article that he wrote, I believe is from December of the issue of 1868, he gave a speech. And this speech talked about the Day of the Dead, that was November 1st. And a week after that, he published in the month of December of 1868, in the Spirit Review, his speech. And the article starts talking about, is Spiritism a religion? And pretty much what he answered in his dissertation, in the speech that he gave in the Spirit Center, in the Spiritist Society of Paris, that he was the coordinator of the study in that time, is that yes and no. And I think Susanna already brought to us a basic information of this doctrine, this body of knowledge that the spirits brought to us. And when he answered, yes, it is a religion because of once we learn about this new science that the spirits brought to us, and we need to make this very clear because Spiritism was not something that Kardec created, was the spirit's teachings that he was the editor-in-chief, he was the codifier to materialize the teaching of the spirits in books that we call nowadays the Spiritist codification. So he said that it is a science, as Susanna beautifully explained it, and once we start to dive in the investigation, also raise question, become a philosophical aspect as well, has a philosophical aspect because allow us to ask questions. And what we're gonna do with those answers or those questions that now the spirit is answer to us, and this is already published in those books. So that ask about ourselves. And by definition, he said that spiritualism is the science that study the origin, the nature, and the destiny of spirit, and the relationship with the corporeal world. So he's adding that, okay, it's not only enough to know what is the spirit or what's the nature of spirit. And we even don't know. Kardec asked this question, the Spirit's book, and the enlightened spirit answer, well, you don't have the vocabulary to explain what the spirit is. But now, the most important for us here is this relationship that we have with matter. So, Daniel, what you are trying to say here? Well, it's the relationship that we have with our body, if the relationship we have with one another, if the relationship that we have with nature, for example. Because once we understand this principle, for example, the first principle that is the existence of God, so, and as sometimes it's very difficult for us to understand or to have this concept of what is God. Is God a spirit? Is it energy? Is God a person? I mean, we already, as a humanity, we have been going through all this definition or this assumption what God is. But the best way for us to understand of God is to treasure the creation. Once we look at, as Susanna mentioned, butterfly, once you look at the ocean, once you look at the sun, so we can understand God by appreciate the creation, the God's creation. So in that sense, this relationship that we have with matter will help us to connect with God without any intermediary. And that is the aspect of religiosity that is very important for us. And sometimes um, um, we become very attached to the definition of religion. And in that sense, Kardec said, Spiritism is not a religion if you understand religion as this structure body that we human created, where there is a hierarchy, where there is ritual. So in that sense, Spiritism is not a religion. But in the sense that we are more than this physical body, more than the matters that surround us, that we are this intelligent principle of the creation, that there is a supreme intelligence, the first cause of everything. In that sense, Spiritism is a religion. In that sense, Spiritism will help us to accept, when we say us, our society in the future, those principles as the future of religions. So religion, all the structural religion that we still have nowadays, is not going to disappear. It's going to continue, but they will absorb, they will accept those principles that Susanna just has explained to us. If we go to the Genesis, this subject, if you wanted to really understand more how is this spiritual principle will contribute for the future of religion, I think Kardec beautiful described this in the Genesis, the last book of the codification, chapter 18, this chapter is entitled, The Time Has Come. And this chapter talking about two sub-items. One is called Sign of the Times, and the other one, the new generation. When Kardec talks about these new spirits that were reincarnated in the planet, some of those spirits is a spirit that was already here, that has evolved in the spiritual plane, and now they come back to boost the planet to a next phase, the planet to become a world of regeneration. And the sign of times, where he particularly talks about how religion and how the spiritist principle will contribute to our society. When this is going to happen, Daniel, I don't know. But we are in this moment of figuring out what's happening on our planet nowadays is this call that we, incarnate is trying to find out ourselves in an environment where we live in more harmonical way. So it's like when we decide to clean our house, isn't it? So in the beginning, everything is a chaos. So there is dust everywhere. So we put all the furniture, we move it around. So if you wanted to really do a deep cleaning in our house, the first couple of hours is not fun. And what our planet is living right now, and all this problem that we are facing, social injustice, religions, scandals, political, in the political arena, is part, the pandemic that we are going right now is part of this transformation that we are going through. So people always say we are in the planetary transition, isn't it? But in fact, we are evolving, you know? We are in the process of evolution, and that's supposed to happen. So going back to what Kardec brings in the Genesis, chapter 18, specifically in the item 17, Signs of the Time, Kardec says, fraternity must be the cornerstone of the new social order. Fraternity. However, there cannot be true, solid, and effective fraternity unless it rests upon an unshakable foundation. That foundation that Kardec is talking about is faith. And we already learn about that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, when Kardec says that unshakable faith is that can face reason in all epoch of humanity. He says, not faith in these or those particular dogmas, which changes with the times and people who cast stone at one another, because they feed hostility. It's pretty much what we are saying, what we are seeing nowadays. A lot of people that call themselves religion people, they are using those faith with hidden agenda, and they are cast stone to one another. We as a spiritism, we should be careful for that, not to repeat that. We should read what we learn already that is in the Spirit's codification, and try not to repeat what other religions arena sometimes are doing. The followers, okay? So then in this paragraph, Kardec continues to say that, but this faith is a faith that is accepted, is the fundamental principle, that this fundamental principle that is accepted by everyone. And what is this principle? This idea of God, the idea of the soul as the intelligent principle of the creation, the future life. We are here temporarily. So there is a future life. There is the real life that is our spiritual life. And most important, the ongoing progress of individuals and the perpetuity of relationship among them. So at the end, Kardec is talking about that fraternity is going to become the cornerstone of the future religion. And then when we look at that, we can associate this with the spiritual principle. So this idea of the universe, the God not being the God of my church, of my congregation, is better than the God of other church, of other congregation. It is kind of sad, but it is understandable that in terms of Christianity, for example, we have about 600 to 1,000 different denominations of Christianity. Only here in the US, I was Googling before we sit down here, that we have 600 different type of denomination about Christianity. Well, somehow this is not something bad in the sense that we are all in different levels, which means that we have the free will to interpret the scripture and Jesus teaching in a different way. That's fine. What becomes a concern here is how we use those teaching as a weapon to combat other ideas. In that sense, this spiritual principle, and one of the principles that Spiritism treasure, beside of those 5 principles that Susanna brought to us, is the free will. Spiritism has one of his principles that we should respect other people's opinion, even though sometimes we think that the opinion is still a little bit behind, and that we need to be careful with that as well, because even Jesus, that is our model and guide, he never diminished anyone in order for him to become, he already was in that level. Okay. Another thing that I would like to bring to us for our reflection is about Spiritism as a science. So we mentioned about that Spiritism study the nature, the destiny, the origin of spirit. So when we think about the word science, and we look at what we know about the investigation of matter, for example, that is our current science of matter. One of the things that we observe is that what is the object of study, the object of study of science. For example, when we look at biology, so biology is a branch of science, scientific science that that's pretty much study the living organism, study life, organic life. And this science is divided in different branches that is specialized in different aspects. For example, they cover the morphology, the physiology, the anatomy, uh, behavior, origin of the organic life. So this is the object of study of science, matter, in this sense, the organic life. When we look at, for example, astronomy, what's the object of study of astronomy? So astronomy is the science that studies celestial object and the phenomenon. Look at to the sky, to the universe, and try to explain those what happens out there. For example, physics. What's the object of study of physics? Physics is concerned about the nature and the property of matter, and as well of energy. So without those, without this knowledge about biology, about physics, pretty much we're not going to be here today doing this live and have this conversation. Because through the study of this branch of science, we have evolved intellectually, as well. We have provide a lot of development to help us to be in the stage that we are right now. But then comes the spirit science, the science of the spirit, or spiritism, for example, as Kardec named this body of knowledge. That what is the object of spiritism? What is the object of the science of spiritism? So we already said it's the spirit. So now our challenge now is to understand ourselves. We have pretty much advanced in the development of matter, but now we need to understand what our future is going to be, what kind of society we wanted to live for the future, or we wanted to come back later through the process of reincarnation that Susanna mentioned as well, and find out in the material level. So I would like to stop here for this reflection. I know that this topic can go, many hours. And another thing that was in my mind to share with you was what Leon Denis also has brought to us. Leon Denis, in the book Into the Unseen, in Portuguese it's called No Invisível, the chapter 11, when he talks about the moral application and the fruits of Spiritism, he says, the word's religion will gradually add the fundamental concept of Spiritism, and that religion will naturally become so similar that the distinguish between one and the other will no longer be made. It does not matter which religion you follow. There will be a worldwide harmony in relation to the concept about life and spirituality, all united in agreement in favor of the universal good. Fraternal and universal good will be the religion of the future. And those fraternity and the universal good is what Spiritism is about. So I would like to pass to Susanna to make the final consideration, to see if there is any other thing that we could help here.
No, that was wonderful. I was just like listening and envisioning, imagining. It's a great exercise to imagine a world where, you know, that sentiment prevails in our society. I was we have like 5 minutes. I was at work, and in my job, I have people from all kinds of religions. I have a couple Jewish folks, some people who are kind of evangelical, and a Buddhist. And that's part of my team, my rehab team. And we are constantly, it's interesting because we sit around a table to have lunch, and we talk about very philosophical items. Each one of us brings their point of view. You can actually sense that in essence, the essence is there. We're all talking about the same thing, although slightly different ways sometimes, right? But when I hear that and when I participate in dialogues like that, I see, this is the way we are going, you know? On the other hand, in face of COVID and some of the disasters that have been happening, one of my coworkers, who is the most faithful, like churchgoer, she was like so anxious, and it's like, how does God let this happen? So she's super, super faithful, super devoted, and without using spiritism terms, I said to her, "Don't you know that God is in control? Don't you know that we cannot comprehend God's ways all the time, but is the time where we are called to give testimony of our faith and trust that there is a." So I use the principles and I talk without putting spiritism terms, and she's like listening. Completely different religions, and yet we are talking about these very fundamental principles that sometimes for us, it becomes a little bit more clear, a little bit more concrete. The principle is there, but we have a better, I think, sometimes grasp on the principle because it's a little bit more defined, just like spirit's a little bit more defined to us,
Yes,
right?
yes. And Kardec was very careful about this because he didn't want to create a new religion. He knows that
Right.
that would be a problem, and
Mm-hmm.
come from the scientific background because he was, in that time he was a scientist. We didn't have this science that we have nowadays, but he was very careful with this, that in the introduction, I think in the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is a item that called the Universality of the Spiritist teaching.
Teachings, right? Mm-hmm.
That saved pretty much, because when you read, save pretty much this idea that Spiritism is not a new religion. And he was very careful to mention that this idea is not new. This idea is in nature. This idea has permeated humanity since the beginning of man has walked on the earth. But he's bring this to us, and also make sure that the fact that we are in different levels of understanding and the evolution spiritually and also intellectually, is expected that our understanding about this, about those questions about God, about
Mm-hmm.
the universe, has different meaning for, depends of the level that the people is in that phase. So I always like to ask the question, Susanna, and I would like to share this with the listeners. It's like, so right now, you and I, we are here talking about this subject, and we have this understanding that by understanding the process of evolution, that's not enough. Probably if we have to come back 20 years from now, you and I, for example, our dissertation, the way we face life would be pretty much different as we were now, different as if you were like 20 years ago.
Right.
So this brought put us in perspective for one day to accept everyone
Hmm.
without those, limitations that we still have nowadays. And to finalize this comment, one of the things that I always think and people always bring to us is the sense of common sense. And I always ask back to the person, what is common sense for you? Don't you see this is a common sense? People should accept this. God is in control. It's, well, let's stop there. Because your common sense, even common sense has different levels. Your common sense is related
Different meanings.
different meaning. I'm sorry, different meaning. Your
Yeah.
common sense is related to the level that that person is. So when I see someone come say, you know, what is God? This God is sleeping. I heard this a lot when we have the September 11th. In
Hmm.
that time,
Right.
people say, what happened? Why God allowed this to happen? Why this pandemic has to happen?
Right.
So what do we say? Sometimes the best answer is like just stay in silence because we don't have the answer. So, and then if we try to put our idea over there, even time we use spiritism to answer question, but the question is those answers that we give to someone also we believe inside of us if we go to that situation?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. In other words, how internalized and robust our faith is.
Exactly.
Because it's one thing is to speak, right? What if your loved one was in one of those buildings? What if your loved one is dying today? You know how right? How internalized and solid our faith is. One thing is to talk about it. The other thing is to live
Live.
and to bear witness of the faith that we hold in our hearts. So, and
I
then,
gotta tell you, that's so true. And we all, this time of pandemic, we all have been experienced this in some way or another. Either like lose loved one that's very close to us, other losing friends. And we know that we don't like to talk about ourselves, but having those teaching, and I always mention, look, the fact that we know spirituals doesn't mean that when the time of the testimony comes, you're gonna be like jumping around and like you know, I'm happy, because that's not true. You know,
yeah,
of course, what spirituals is gonna diminish is that you're gonna go through that process more serene. It's gonna bring serenity.
right.
Is what spiritualism is about.
Yeah, as I like to say, you never lose your ground. You always have a base that you're walking on.
Exactly.
Anyway, Daniel, I would love. It makes me wanna like do this again and maybe just a continuity where we can just be chatting, talking, including the public. By the way, in October, our whole month of October will be talks like this, like Daniel and I. It's a celebration of our anniversary. We're gonna have different guests and it's going to be open to the public participation. It's going to be much more of a conversation than a lecture per se. But it was a true pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
I
Thank
love.
you. Thank you, everybody who has joined us today. I'm going to put you momentarily on backstage and do our final prayer. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So, so, my dear friends, we come to the end. I hope you enjoyed this morning, this talk, this format. If you like it, give us a thumbs up or let us know, communicate with us. We're always looking for different ways to broadcast our meetings and to make it interesting and appealing to you, and also, something that we can enjoy and get the most out of this time that we spend together. Let's just take a moment and close our eyes if you feel comfortable in doing that. So we can say, Dear Father, thank you so much for this time that we spend together. Above all, today, we would like to thank you for the blessings of this amazing body of knowledge we call Spiritism, all the teachings, all the lessons, and all that it does to us at all moments of our lives. We are so incredibly blessed to have Spiritism, to have this philosophy, to have our dear Lord guiding and helping us in each moment, and to know, to understand that God is this loving Father who watches over us and takes care of each one of us individually. For all that we have, for all that we are given, for the blessings of each day, we would like to thank you. As we ask for all the ones who are suffering, who are in trouble, who are in darkness, who are in need, may your love be with them as well, and bless us all throughout this week until we're able to meet again next week. Again, thank you very much, and so be it. Dear friends, please, thank you for being here with us today. Don't forget to make your donations, they're important. Again, we'll be looking for a new home very soon. As always, we're going to need some financial resources to help us to find ourselves a new home that hopefully we can move back sooner than later. So please help us out. Again, if you can, don't forget to check out our study groups. We have many, many study groups. We have meetings happening both in Portuguese and English, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I think that Friday is the only day that we don't have anything going on at Conscious Living. So our doors, if not physical, but the doors of our hearts remain open to all of you. If you need anything, please do not hesitate to contact us. If you need to talk, if you need a hand, if you need a hug through the internet, whatever it is that you need, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to be with you. Okay? Have a blessed, blessed day, everyone. I'll see you guys again very soon.